the first mainline diesels I remember were D8000 and D8001, which were class 20s. Of course, at that time we didn't know they were class 20s, but I saw them several times, and what a marvellous loco they've turned out. Because I believe, I think I'm right in saying that some are still soldiering on to this day.
You didn't very often see a Class 20 on its own. They almost always worked in pairs. And if you were lucky enough to see one on its own, well, that was worth a photograph. I always used to like seeing them run nose first as well. That was always a novelty. And with the back-to-back driving position they used to have, it must have been like driving a steam engine, I should think, for the drivers.
The Class 20s, I think my memories of that was probably one of the best memories a lot of people have, and that is the summer Saturday train to Skegness. That was always well worth doing. Although from where I lived in Cleethorpes, it was a very early start to get out to Nottingham, being able to pick it up from Nottingham and go through to Skegness and back with it. But that was always a superb day out, and always stood on the platform at Nottingham waiting for them to turn up was great.
The Class 20s, yeah, we used to look forward to the summer weekends when we have a ride behind the Class 20s. They used to put two together because they weren't too powerful to pull, and we'd go all the way over to Skegness. It was a great day out.
Yeah, they were popular in their own way, I suppose. I think the thing most people liked about them, like a lot of locos, was the sound.
I think the 56s, I think they all were painted all over blue when they first came out. I could be wrong there. I know the first 30 were built in Romania, and the rest were built over here.
56s. I remember when they first came out. They looked old-fashioned then. They were, I think they were predominantly freight, weren't they? They reminded me of the 24, I think.
I did a fortnight's work experience at Immingham TMD when I was still at school, and one of the memories I always treasure from that is a Class 56 that came off repairs at Immingham, and I went out with a traction inspector and a driver and the cab pass, and we took it on a test run to Barnet back, and that was quite enthralling for a youngster to be in the cab of a 56 and to be watching its performance after coming off repairs.
Despite the fact that the 56 was probably the last sort of traditional looking loco, the first batch were actually built in Romania, and the first one I ever saw in fact was number 31, which was the last of those.
I also remember a particular occasion when we went to Shirebrook, and there was all these brand new 56s, magnificent sign, all straight over from Romania. And of course they were all in blue.
And the noise was superb. With the 56, it wasn't really like anything else you'd ever heard.
There was one, 56042, wasn't it? The one that was non-standard, it ran on different bogies. That was the one everybody wanted. Everybody wanted to see that one. Nobody could find it. And apparently it did a lot of work, but it did become the first casualty of the class and was the first withdrawal. Well, I suppose it must have been a good livery, because now in this century, in the 21st century, they're actually painting some of the engines in blue again. I think 37308, 56006, one of the 87s, isn't it? Is it number 1? And one of the Class 47s. They've all been retro painted in the corporate blue livery.
Of course, one thing that people don't perhaps remember is that when the AC electrics came out on the London Midland region electrification, and the very early ones, they were called AL1s when they first came out, and then they were obviously then 81s, the Class 81s. They were blue right from the word go.
Holiday times. I used to remember we go to Blackpool for a weekend. We'd leave Euston behind one of the blue electrics, and what you could just remember from them days is that it was so fast compared to what we were normally used to. You had so much more time in Blackpool. You could go to the fairground and you could have ice cream, and it was just, you got there much quicker and you had a longer day there.
Oh, back in years gone by, if I ever needed, or if I ever wanted to see any electrics or EMUs or anything like that, obviously being on the east coast side of of the UK, I always had to travel over to the west coast, and Birmingham New Street was always a favourite haunt for that because it was easy to get to, and it was always a treat to be able to see the 85s, 86s, etc., and the EMUs coming and going, because it was something that you didn't see over our side of the country at all, because back then it wasn't electrified. So it was always good to go over there and see them.
Because of the fact I lived in Nuneaton, class 81s to 87s you used to see all the time, so it wasn't hard to understand. It didn't take me long to clear them.
I can't think of an electric that has got any sort of interesting design to it. They're just very, very bland.
Some of the old EMUs I remember used to have compartments and pictures on the walls of these compartments as well. They were quite good to travel in, actually. If you remember the old Ian Allen combined volume books we used to use, one of the big sections in there, of course, was the EMUs. And most of this section was the southern region ones, because there were that many of them. Different formations, different 4 SIGs, VEPs, reps. There was absolutely loads of them. There were other units dotted around the country in places like on the Manchester to Bury service and things like that. But the southern region certainly had the most.
By the 90s, I would say BR Blue, as a well-seen livery, was certainly dying a death.
I must admit I did prefer the diesels in the original green, two-tone green colour.
Well, it was my era. I grew up with it. I wouldn't give you a thank you for green locos.
Brilliant to see that, and of course it's a memory that I'll cherish for a long time.
It is a shame, it's a big shame. It's another part of the 70s and my particular era that I miss a great deal, to be honest.
Those days I do remember with relish, certainly. They were terrific days.